Hi, I'm Molly Suberthorpe. Welcome to my channel where I offer bite-sized tutorials and demonstrations in hand lettering. Today we're going to do something a little bit different, which is to take an in-depth look inside of my latest book, Mastering Modern Calligraphy. Before we dive right in, I want to give just a little bit of background about why I wrote this book. So in 2013, I published my first book, Modern Calligraphy, and this actually did so well that I decided I wanted to write a second how-to guide. The target audience of this new book is what I would call early, intermediate, through advanced calligraphers. You by no means have to be a professional calligrapher to use my new book, but you do have to have at least a basis in the technical skills of holding a pointed pen, using it, and just at least a little bit of practice under your belt already. If you already own my book, I hope that this video is going to help you make the most of it. And if you're thinking about whether to buy it or not, I hope that this video helps you make your decision. As always, remember to tag me in your work on Instagram if you follow along with any of my tutorials or make projects from out of any of my books, because I always love to see what you're up to. And without further ado, let's dive right in. I was insistent with my publisher that I make this book spiral bound. My first book wasn't, and it was something that I had always wanted, but my publisher had taken a gamble on me. It was my first book. Understandably, the investment of spiral binding wasn't something that they wanted to pursue in my first time around, but I was able this time to really insist on it, and they were very open to it. I'm grateful to them because I really think it adds a lot to have the ability to have the book lie flat and be able to work with it either by tracing the letters or just by, not having to hold the book down as you go. So the point of this book for me ultimately was to help people really refine and create their own modern style. And there are so many amazing books out there on really traditional, ornate calligraphy styles, and those are fantastic, but it's not the style that I do, and it's not the style that I teach. I have a much more loose approach to calligraphy, which is really honestly that there are no rules that are hard and fast that can't be broken. So the goal of this book, like I say, is to really help you break out of bad habits and also create a unique style that really is applicable to your own personal aesthetic. So we start out here with methods for effective practice, because a lot of us, myself included, can get into bad habits of whether it's how we hold the pen or just how often we practice. So I really want to start again with those foundational techniques to get people on the right track in their practice. And then I really lay out what I, over the years, have come to understand as the principles of modern calligraphy styles, the ways that we can take those traditional rules and those traditional letter form principles and apply them to a sort of more flexible, modern approach. So I really break down in depth the ways that as you work through the book, you'll be able to take each letter form that I show you and tweak it in very intelligent, targeted ways to achieve a different aesthetic that you may be after. I also show you all of the letter anatomy and grid anatomy. I did write this book essentially based on years of questions that I received from my own students in the calligraphy workshops that I teach. And a very common question that I honestly had taken for granted was how to use letter grids. What do all of the lines mean, and when should I follow them, and what grid should I choose for different styles? So I go into depth about that a lot in the beginning and throughout and at the end of the book. I go very much in depth as well into the question of what nib is right for different styles and what nib is right for you. A bit like driving a car. Different cars have different brakes and acceleration and sizes, and it's a really personal decision which one best suits your needs and honestly makes you the most comfortable to use. And so I really break down what the most popular nibs are and what the benefits and potential drawbacks are of each one. Same goes for sharing some of my favorite tools and supplies like inks and papers and pen holders. I just really get into how to make a toolkit that isn't necessarily the best items that are universally agreed upon, but are the best items for you. In my view, no book about practice would be complete without an extensive section about warming up and doing exercise drills. This is really important for me to do every single time that I sit down to do calligraphy, and especially for those of you who are learning and still training your hand and getting that muscle memory in place. It's really important to force yourself to step back from making pretty letters and take some time in your daily practice or weekly practice or monthly practice, what have you, to really practice the shapes. And doing that in pencil, I recommend in the book, is one great way to do that. And then moving into ink to really get the test driving of your different nibs going and just build that muscle memory and build those shapes and practice the fundamentals. Next, I show you what I consider to be a very modern basic alphabet. This is an alphabet that you really can't go wrong with in terms of a modern script pointed pen style, and it's one that's honestly very flexible. So a lot of the techniques I give in the book about how to adjust and tweak and push and pull letter forms applies very easily to this style. So I break it down in depth in its own section of the book, and I give lots of examples of it. But then I move into what I consider the most fun part, which is letter variations. So essentially, let me put it this way. When I wrote the proposal for this book to my publisher, and I had to tell them why I thought this book was needed on the market and why I was excited to write it, I think I literally used the sentence in my proposal that I wanted to overwhelm readers with inspiration for letter forms. I really said to them, I want to throw so many letter variations at people that they feel like, oh my gosh, I'll never even be able to practice all of these. So that was my goal in this, and I really tried hard to start in this letter variation section by taking this modern alphabet that I showed you before and showing you page upon page upon page how you can take these basic letters and vary them in just a handful of ways each. Just simple variations that you can do, extending a tail, increasing an X height, adjusting the slant to create a completely different mood, look, and feel. And for those of you who are really starting out and are wanting to, just learn the ropes completely, I even have added arrows to each letter form that has unique stroke patterns, and I've color-coded them with the first stroke that you should do, where you should lift, when the second or possibly third stroke is. So if you still need assistance with stroke patterns, I offer that for you as well, all throughout. Of course, I give variations of uppercase letters as well, going very in depth with every letter of the alphabet. Numbers, symbols, etc. And then I go into ligatures because for me, there's nothing more personalized and unique about a style than how your letters actually interact with each other or connect. So I've given a lot of ways that letters can become sort of one continuous shape. How do you make it look like your letters aren't just one coming after another, but that they were really thought out with intention and connected in a way that is unique to you. So I've given you tons of examples of that, lowercase, and then I move on to upper lowercase combinations. And these are common at least in English. I tried to choose letter combinations that are the most common because of course there are infinite possibilities, but I really went through what I thought would be the most useful for you. After individual letter connections, I move from letters into words. This is honestly my favorite part of the whole book. Maybe I've said that like multiple times, but I mean it this time. This is an exercise I do in my intermediate and advanced calligraphy workshops a lot. It's a method that has helped me personally come up with my own different styles. So this exercise essentially says to take any lettering style that you're already comfortable with and find a way to get here, to get to a completely different style. It doesn't mean that your styles will look like mine. It means that through targeted exercises and changes, for example, write out the style that you're most comfortable with, then write it again with just one change, adjusting the slant. Then take that and write it again with another change, but just one at a time, decreasing the X height, say. And so I provide these prompts for you as ways to make targeted changes to your modern calligraphy, where you'll ultimately be able to go from one style you're already comfortable with to a new style you may never have been able to come up with if you were trying to go from here to here. I give lots of examples of this in ways that a single letter can be adjusted through these targeted variations. Now, lots of people like to see complete alphabets, and I understand why. I personally am someone who likes to combine letter forms and play around with letters to see how they match and complement each other, but I did also want to provide you with a variety of complete modern alphabets. So I've given you 5 complete alphabets that have upper and lowercase, and then in the next chapter, uppercase only alphabets that are great for things like monograms. I think based on the feedback I've gotten from the book, this alphabet, Nautica, that I made is becoming one of the most popular. It really guides you in making these really loose, whimsical, freehand styles that are pretty popular nowadays, but can be difficult for people, especially who have a foundation in more traditional calligraphy like copperplate, to let go and create. Okay, skipping ahead quite a bit through all of those alphabets. Here's another that I wanted to include, which is a monoline style. There are monoline dip pens, and if you don't already have one, it's a really cool investment. I do suggest particular ones and brands here and in the beginning that I would recommend for doing monoline styles. But it's just something that I absolutely love. I've been getting more and more into monoline calligraphy, and it just has such a unique, fun, sort of retro look. Okay, and then this section of majuscules and monograms, this whole section on just really fancy uppercase letters. I really show you all of the ways that you can, create these really, really flourished individual letters. Maybe I can show you here too that in these as well, I've really given you all the arrows for all the different strokes and where they start and where they stop and where you should lift. Because I know that especially when it comes to flourishes, that can be one of the tricky parts for people who are learning. So this is for the intermediate to advanced calligraphers. I have a whole section of layout design. So this really goes into my techniques, which I learned honestly as a graphic designer in school for layout design. Even though that wasn't specific to hand lettering, a lot of those layout principles apply certainly to hand lettered layouts. So I really walk you through the steps that I personally use when I create an initial draft of a layout all the way through the final fancy flourished design. And I go really in depth about how to critique your own work. That's another point I try to drive home in this book, is really how to have a critical eye with your work without being down on yourself. What I tell my students all the time is that every calligrapher who you admire started out somewhere. And every calligrapher who's a professional today still makes what they would consider to be ugly calligraphy every once in a while. You're not looking in their recycling bins, you're looking at their Instagram. So don't be too hard on yourself, but do find a way to say, okay, I don't like the calligraphy that I just made, or I don't like the layout that I made, or I don't like how these words connect. But rather than just saying I don't like it and continuing a trial and error approach of getting something I like, let me figure out what I don't like, how I would like it to be different, what I would like to change. And then you can make targeted approaches that get you to your finish line much faster. So there's quite a lot about layout design in here, and I give many examples, not just straight lines, but also curves and things like that. And then a whole section on envelope addressing. The bread and butter of most calligraphers, the skill that we usually all start out doing. I certainly did in my career. So I take a lot of the styles that I've already shown throughout the book, and I put them in here in different alphabets, and then I give you little previews actually of all caps styles that I like to do when I combine multiple styles into single layouts. And then, of course, what everybody asks for is flourishes. And just like with letter forms, those exercises in pencil and ink that I showed you in the beginning, I think that exercising flourishes is super important before you go into adding them to letters. So I've provided you with a ton a ton of flourishing exercises here that take you through flourishing of all different types: vertical, diagonal, curved, horizontal, so that you can really get some of those foundational principles down before you move into the larger flourishes, especially those that connect to letters. Some popular things like wreaths and banners and little floral designs and patterns. Okay, and then at the end, I really wanted to provide additional resources for you, for your practice, for your business, and for your toolkit. So the first section of my appendix is this massive grids and guides section. And here's where I actually give you 13 completely unique guides that apply to all different types of modern calligraphy styles. So let me show you it this way. Each one shows the ratio of the different lines, the slant, and gives you a little preview of the type of lettering that I would use this grid for. So for example, this guide number 1, I say it's for equal proportioned medium-sized letters at a moderate slant. Because I know it can be hard to just look at a blank grid and envision what the letters that are placed on it might look like. So, I mean, it's honestly kind of endless. And I've been asked, am I supposed to write directly on these grids? No. This is about giving you inspiration that you can either trace from or photocopy these for personal use and use them over and over and over. That's what they're here for. And I even provide you with the grid that I used for all of those flourishing exercises so that you can photocopy this for yourself or just use it to trace from and get those exact outlines for your flourishing exercises. And then for a more advanced step, I show you how to make your own grids. Okay, then I provide a glossary of some of the most common terminology for hand lettering and supplies. And then possibly the most asked about, that I get emails about all the time, is where do I shop for supplies? What supplies do you most recommend? I don't live in the United States. Where should I go for X? So here I've given you a sampling of my favorite supplies and suppliers in different parts of the world, all over. I tell you what country they're in. Most of them do ship internationally, but still I wanted to give you a wide range around the world so that you can have your pick. I really hope that this has been very helpful for you. I hope that you, like I said, can make the most of this book now if you do own it, and if you don't, I hope that this helps you make your decision about whether to buy it or not. Thank you for following along. If you have any questions about this book, please leave them in the comments section. And also check out the description box below, where I've provided links with more information for all 3 of my books, as well as links for where to purchase them all around the world. If it's free resources that you're after, you can also check in the description box for a link to getting my free lettering toolkit. No strings attached, it's really truly 100% free, and I offer lots of things from practice sheets to lettering guides to Procreate brushes. Remember to subscribe so that you can stay up to date with my new tutorials and demonstrations, and I hope to see you back here soon.